Dave Ramsey is fantastic if you are needing some simple financial help to get out of debt. Maybe you've been irresponsible with your money, you've racked up toxic consumer debt, and you're looking to implement some basic strategies to eliminate that debt and to create new habits for yourself when it comes to your money. Dave has impacted millions of people when it comes to getting out of debt, when it comes to understanding money on a very basic level in a better way. The challenge is, what has happened is Dave has helped millions of people get out of debt. And in that process, he's built a lot of trust up with that people. And so then therefore they start listening to him for retirement advice, for planning for their retirement future. And in this video, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cover the flaw, the major flaw that is in Dave Ramsey's retirement strategies. I'm not gonna argue whether he's right or wrong about returns, but I am gonna point out the massive flaw that most people are missing that he never talks about. Can't wait to get into it. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell, that way you're notified every time I launch a new video. Let's go. Hey, what's going on, Cashflow hackers? It's Chris with Life 180. If you've been watching this channel a while, you know how I feel about Dave Ramsey. But I wanna kind of take the conversation about Dave to a little bit of a different level in this video. Here's the deal. Dave is really good when it comes to helping you get out of debt. But his advice on retirement planning is absolutely, in my opinion, atrocious. One of the biggest challenges that I have about Dave and his strategies is that he's been singing the same song for 30 years, right? He has not changed his philosophies, his strategies. He hasn't really even changed the numbers that he uses when it comes to retirement planning. And the expectations that you should have around your retirement planning, even though the economic environment has changed metamorphically, right? So if you understand that there are variables that impact your money and impact what you can expect in retirement, you have to understand that there are no simple rules that Dave tries to tell you, to follow, to execute. Now, I will say, that, you know, the advice Dave gives is like, it's better than nothing. Like that, I will say. It's better than doing nothing, and it's better than what most people do. But I also believe that it's a problem that if you follow his advice expecting a certain result, and then you get to the end of the rainbow and there's no pot of gold, and you're actually not anywhere near where you thought you'd be, that's gonna be a problem. Once again, we're not talking about the debt elimination stuff. We're talking about which, by the way, is a phenomenal thing to understand that and get out of debt. Like, so from that perspective, I applaud him. Now, moving forward, when we're talking about wealth creation, that's where he falls down. When it comes to retirement planning, what I did is I built a spreadsheet, because I think numbers say a million words. Spreadsheet, you know, we can go through this. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna share this. So here's what I wanted to do here. I wanted to take a look at a household income of about $100,000 in today's money. I want to save 15% of that income annually. I'm going to assume an expected return of 10% per year, okay? So what this does is, like, Dave is going to sit here and talk about the fact that you need to save money based on retirement. You need to target retirement account values based on your $100,000 a year of income. The challenge is Dave doesn't take into account when he's ever talking about it. I don't know why either. I don't know why, if he thinks people just aren't smart enough to figure it out. But to me, this is just basic financial stuff that you need to know the understanding of. You need to understand to be able to make an educated decision. If you don't understand how inflation impacts your financial needs long term, you're never going to be able to make a good financial decision. And especially that we're in this environment right now where inflation is 4.9%. Last year it was over 9%. Long term, since 1971, inflation has been over 4%, actually nearing 4.5%. So, like, from that perspective, looking at it from a long-term historical average, this 4.9% inflation environment that we're in right now, that everybody's freaking out about, is not even high. It's just a little bit above average. Now, a lot of people would argue that inflation is actually way worse than what we're talking about right now, because the actual impact on the calculation of inflation, the impact is much greater and worse on individual households than what the calculation says, because they've actually changed the calculation over the past 40 years on how they determine the inflation numbers, which to me is criminal on its own. But here's the deal. We have the $100,000 of income. So what I have over here is I have the retirement account balance needed to live with a 4% rule. So if you don't know what the 4% rule is, it's the rule of thumb that says you can distribute 4% of your retirement account value and not run a significant risk of running out of money during your lifetime. So that is like the safe distribution calculation expectation. So what this is showing is that if you had $100,000 of income, you need $2.6 million. Actually, it's $104,000. I didn't do it for year one. If you get to year two and your real need on 4% inflation is going to be $104,000 because your cost of living with inflation going up, it means you're going to need more money. It means your $104,000 next year with 4% inflation is going to feel like $100,000 of income feels today. The challenge is household income historically is only going up at about 3%, so it's lagging actual inflation, and this is why the middle class and the poor are getting poorer, and there's this growing divide between the wealthy and the middle class. It's not so much other economic policies, even though that has a play with it. Long-term, inflation is the greatest tax that is hidden to the American population, and it has a hugely negative impact on the middle class and lower class the most, right? So ultimately, this column is what I would call your freedom number. Your freedom number is simply the amount of money that you need in an account to be able to retire, to be able to be completely financially free. And so right now, using traditional 4% rule methodology, and now I'm not taking into account Social Security or pension or anything of that nature. So if in fact you did have a pension, if in fact you want to lean on Social Security for any reason, you'd have to look at your calculation, reduce those off of this number, and then you divide that by 4%, and that will give you this number. So if you said, let's say you had $54,000 of pension and Social Security, you'd subtract that out, that'd be $50,000 divided by the 4%, and that would get you what your freedom number would be. It would tell you how much money you need in that account to be able to kick off passive income for you for the rest of your life. Now, here's the challenge. As I said, household income's only going up at 3%, and Dave is saying, hey, you need to save 15%, even if we earn 10%, which is, by the way, wildly unrealistic, right? I'm showing this at 10%, and it shows you at 6.561 million here, but really that's because of the fact that it's assuming that you're going to have a $281,000 need for annual income. Now, here's the deal. Your income is going up at 3% per year. That 283, 35 years from now, because I'm assuming this is a 35-year-old retiring at 65, Dave doesn't talk about the fact that if you earn 100 grand right now, you're going to need 281 to be able to maintain your standard of living. That's not $281,000 in today's money. That's $281,000 in future money, right? I just did a video the other day talking about inflation and the inflation crisis, and ultimately how that's going to impact you, and how that's like the history of this inflation and where it looks, what it looks like moving forward into the future. But this 281, by the way, is assuming only a 3% increase. At a 4% historical average of inflation, if we look at it that way, you're going to actually need $394,000. And if you back that out, you're going to need $9,865,000. And the problem is all of your Social Security, cost of living adjustments, cost of living increases, they don't keep up with the actual rate of inflation. So the need for you to take more responsibility for your retirement planning is becoming greater and greater and greater. And as inflation keeps going up, this is a way, if you think about it from a Social Security perspective, this is a way that the government's able to kind of save Social Security. If they can inflate the currency at 4%, and devalue the currency, but then only give you cost of living adjustments at 2%, that means they're recapturing that money and saving the program simply by the way they're doing that. But ultimately, they're stealing that money from you through a hidden tax. The problem is Dave doesn't talk about all this. And what he does is he talks about your need for this money. He talks about saving $1 million. And I got news for you. You could save $3 million. And if you get to retirement and you have $3 million, but you need to live on $281,000 a year, you are going to be up the creek without a paddle. You're not going to be prepared, and you're not going to be in a position, ultimately where you're, going to be able to, have a solid situation. You know, that's really what it comes down to. You're not going to have any kind of predictable income. You're not going to have any stability, you know, and you're ultimately going to have a lot of risk, especially when it comes to market risk, sequence of return risk, and just market volatility risk when it comes to your retirement. If you follow his plan, you're going to be undersaved when it comes to retirement, simply because you didn't give enough credibility to the impact that inflation is going to have on your future needs. Because think about it this way, everything I just showed you was a 10% assumption. I could show you a lot of ways that 10% is completely unrealistic, especially when you talk about actual real returns. I would say 6 to 8% is the more realistic expectation, and even then there's some risk involved, right? So if we back that out, what that would look like at even 8%, which is I think the more, I guess, traditional method that most financial advisors would say you could get from a long-term perspective. If you look at 8%, you're only going to have just over $4 million. That's about at retirement 35 years from now for a 30-year-old, right? When you hit 65. So in that scenario, you're still looking at only accumulating about half of the money that you're going to need just to maintain your standard of living. I don't care how much you have in Social Security or pension, it's probably not going to make up that gap, and you're going to have to take a reduction in standard of living. Even if you follow his advice and have no car payment and have no mortgage or anything like that, that doesn't matter. That's not going to make up for the gap that inflation has caused for a problem for you. And so that's something that you need to consider. So my encouragement to you is to go through your plan, figure out what inflation is going to do to your retirement planning needs. And if you want help with this, I've got a team, I've got a certified financial planner on the team that's happy to walk through this, give you a consultation, walk through your needs, walk through your current plan, and give you an analysis and an evaluation on what you need to do moving forward to reach your goals on a predictable basis. One of the things I always ask people 4 questions. First and foremost, doing what you're currently doing. Do you know what rate of return your money needs to earn to be able to retire when you want and guarantee your standard of living for the rest of your life? If you don't know the answer to that question, then everything else is going to blow up. You can't plan accordingly if you don't know the answer to that question. Second question is, if you don't know that number, the question is, do you know how much more money you have to save to be able to retire at your desired standard of living and be able to retire when you want? And if you don't know the answer to that, which most people don't, I've literally met one person in my life that actually knew those numbers ahead of time. Then you start backing it out and go, okay, how much longer are you going to have to work if you get to retirement age and you haven't met that and you still need to work? Well, a lot of people, they have to work an extra decade just to make ends meet, right? People are thinking they're going to be able to retire at 65, but they have to work till 75 or 77 or 78. It's really just a sad situation. But then the challenge is our health a lot of times, sometimes sadly, unfortunately, fails on us. When you hit 65, there's no promises, there's no guarantees. Heck, there's no guarantees anyway. But especially when you hit 65, our health starts to fail. And for most Americans, most people in this world, health starts to decline at least, and there start to be different needs. Our bodies break down. Maybe your body isn't going to be as capable of doing the job that you did for all those years to earn your income. And so now you have to start being like, even if I wanted to keep working, what is my real earning potential? Am I really going to keep being able to do that? Or if I get sick, what kind of reduction in standard of living am I going to have to take just to be able to last the rest of my life and not run out of money, right? And so these are the things that you need to consider. If you haven't already, I would encourage you to really do a deep dive, because my favorite quote in the world, I think, and it's kind of tongue in cheek, but just because the ostrich buries his head in the sand doesn't mean the lion's dinner plans have changed, right? This is your problem. This retirement thing is a real problem. It's a thing that you need to figure out a solution to, and you need to create a plan for. As good as Dave is at helping you get out of debt, he's not great at helping you plan for your future. And his information, while it seems great because it's kind of geared towards the masses, it's actually, in my opinion, it's super detrimental to most people that are listening to him, because you're going to get to the end of the rainbow. There's going to be no pot of gold. You're going to find out you got to work longer if you're healthy enough to do so, or you're going to have to reduce your standard of living because you didn't take some of these variables into consideration. So anyway, hopefully you found value in that. If you did, please like it, share it, get it out there to people, subscribe, hit the bell, that way you're notified every time I launch a new video. Till next time, have a blessed, inspirational day. We'll talk soon. See ya.